So here's that original scan. Right here, this is called an adjustment layer, and this is going to give us levels, but it's completely different. Instead of like going in, imagine you're a painter and you're like putting your hands on the canvas and altering the canvas that way. This is almost like it's putting a layer above your canvas so that your original artwork, so this, we're not going to change this scan or this raw scan at all. We're just going to put levels above it so that we get the same results, but we can change it. And I don't know if I'm explaining myself well, but so check this out.
You're looking through a window at it.
Exactly, yeah. So you've got levels on top here. So here in this window, we're doing the same exact thing. See that we've cleaned it up, but we can turn it on and off. So you haven't actually changed your raw scan at all. And so to your question, so what I would do is, in the mask right here, this mask, the fact that it's all white, that means that the levels are being applied to every single thing you see. So let's say that I wanted these eyeballs to not have any levels affecting them. So in your example, maybe these are like the thin lines that are getting lost. So what I would do is, because this is white, I want it to be now black. I want to get the black pen. And see, basically I'm not touching the art at all. All I'm doing is telling the mask not to affect these areas at all. And so that's, adjustment layers are something I was going to touch on later because they're great in color, because you can do all these like color adjustments and stuff on top layers, and you can delete them later, which is fantastic. So let's get rid of those, and I'm going to hit Apple E just to apply these levels, and so now we have a nice little picture. One thing I'd like to talk about is, let's get a new picture here. Alright, one thing I want to talk about is aliased versus anti-aliased lines, or what you might refer to as crisp lines versus blurry lines. So Photoshop has two drawing tools which you'll use a lot. One is the brush and one is pencil. So we're already in the brush, so let's draw something with the brush here. Here's a little square. And now let's hold down and you can go to pencil. And let's draw the same exact thing with the pencil. And from where you're sitting, these probably look exactly the same. But there are two key differences. When you zoom in on the pencil, we're zooming in really, really close here, you've only drawn with black and white. So you get this really, really crisp, delineation between the two colors. And what's great for that is that if I want this shape to actually be gray later, I'll hit G, get the bucket tool. Can't tell if that's contiguous or not. Let's pretend it is. And so if I want to change the color, this is great because everything that was black is now gray. And that's changed. So let's zoom in on the brush here. And what do you see? It's totally blurry, which can be great in some situations if you want, if you don't want sort of that pixely look. But it's tough in editing, especially in comics, if later you want to go in and change the color. So let's tap into gray and you see what happens. And so that's one reason to work in a really high res, but work in this is called aliased. So to work in an aliased environment versus this anti-aliased, which is prettier, albeit prettier, but can kind of mess you up down the road.
But remember the trick about the all of the selection tools.
Oh yeah.
How that's where everyone gets kind of caught up is making sure that those are unchecked.
You're absolutely right. So let's go back. Let's mess around with now selection tools are great. Let's say I've done this drawing, and City Pages says we're not going to run the cartoon, but we love the guy's head and we want to put that on the front cover. Can you just isolate that? And you're like, yes, sir. Of course, I will do that. So you want to use one option you can use is something called a selection tool, which is like this little lasso. And so quick thing you can do is you just tap around the head, blah, 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 connect it, and then from here you can cut it, paste it, do whatever you want with it, paste it in another file. And so what Xander was talking about is that with the lasso, you also have an option. It's tough to read here, but it says anti-aliased. So if this is checked, you're going to get anti-aliased, which again, in my head just says, that just means soft, a soft edge. So watch this. I'm just going to, got my lasso, it's anti-aliased. I'm going to pull a piece of this out. Let's see what happens. So cut that. So I just deleted that. And see that? We've got that soft edge. Again, in some situations, this may be exactly what you want. But I think in comics, especially if you're just working with black and white, you want to avoid this. So what I would do is, hit L, go back to your lasso, keep this off for safety, go back in, do the same exact thing, and you'll notice it's clean. Now it's more jaggedy, it's not as pretty, but it's cleaner. All right.
That's the main thing to remember when you're flatting too.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up on.
How are we doing on time? It's about halfway.
Yep.
Let's go into coloring, I think. Does anybody have any more questions about maybe just some of this straight black and white stuff?
Do you ever apply a threshold to get it all basically jaggedy and aliased?
Apply a what tool?
A threshold?
Yeah, what I'll do for something like this, so this is at 600, I think this is at 600 dpi. If I'm doing a picture that's actually just black and white and I don't want any softness, what I'll do is I'll go into mode, bitmap, yes, and at 50% threshold, I'll change this to 1200 dpi, so I'm basically doubling it.
Okay.
And so again, same exact picture, but you zoom in and everything's nice and crisp on the edge. And this is what, if this was my actual drawing, this 1200 dpi picture is what I'd actually send to City Pages, because this is going to print a lot crisper. It's not going to have any pixelation or anything around the edges. And then,
Does that not make your file size really huge?
no, the beauty of bitmap is that the computer is now only reading zeros and ones, black and white. So bitmap files are actually a lot smaller than a grayscale file. So if you have this option, it's better to go high-res bitmap than low-res grayscale. Oops, I don't know where that guy went here. All right, let's go back to grayscale. Here, let's. Okay. All right, so let's talk about coloring. Let's say I want to color this picture. Let's get rid of that. So the beauty, I think the best part about Photoshop is that you have the ability to create things in layers, and we touched on this a little bit with adjustment layers. But you know, if you're new to Photoshop, the way I like to imagine it is that imagine you have layers and layers of acetate that you're drawing on, and if you put them all together, it looks like one image. But you're able to, you know, pull one of those pieces of acetate, move it to the top, delete it, make adjustments to it, and you can do that. You can make a new layer by going down here. This is the new layer tool, and as soon as you hit that, you've got a new layer on top of your drawing. It's completely blank, and you can do anything you want to it. So I can, just like the adjustment layer, I can do stuff on top, and it hasn't affected the artwork at all. And there's some fun tools you can do, like you can go to multiply, and basically it basically sort of darkens. I don't know what the term would be for that, but you know, it darkens the top layer over it, sort of like acetate, where you can see the two together. You can go, let's go back to normal. Opacity is a thing I play with a lot, so you can bring that down to like, you know, 50 or 60%. If you're messing with some clouds in the background or something, you could do that. So let's get rid of that. And so what I like to do is color on a separate layer so that, again, you're not affecting your line art layer at all. So let's turn this into a layer. So I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to bring it actually underneath my line art layer. First of all, let's call that's the line art. Call these my flats. I'm just going to drop in some flat color. And to start out, we also want to change your image mode. Remember, we've talked about bitmap in grayscale. We're going to go down to CMYK, which you would use a lot for any print stuff. So don't merge. And now we can play with some colors, which is good.